All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining in for today's how-to and Q&A session here on YouTube Live. We're going to start hosting these sessions every Wednesday live, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern, as a different outlet for you guys to come in and raise some of the questions that you guys have, or if you're trying to accomplish something specific and maybe need some how-to help, this is what the session is going to be for. Um, And specifically for today's session, it's kind of a first trial, so we may not have any user questions today. So there are some topics that I'm going to go ahead and jump right into, and this recording will be available for you guys to view at a later time as well. All right, so first thing I'll highlight is our help system here, help.deconetwork.com. It does have a lot of resources to a lot of the questions that we get through the support system. So definitely should be your first stop whenever you do have any type of question in the system. And for today's topic that we're going to be covering is a topic that we've been getting a lot of questions about, specifically within the past couple weeks. A lot of new subscribers have questions about importing products. So, oftentimes these are customers who may not necessarily be signing up from within the US, and in some locations, we don't necessarily have integrations with suppliers. So, they're wanting to add those products in themselves, and that's certainly possible. We give you that ability inside of DecoNetwork. All right, so the first thing I'll do is here in our help system, I'll just type in importing into the help, and I'm going to get some relevant help articles. So I've got importing products and required files for importing products. So let's take a look at required files. Right, so I don't necessarily yet know what information I need to start importing my products. And maybe on another tab, let's go ahead and open up the importing products help article as well. All right, so if we look through this article here, it's going to give us a description of what this import function allows us to do. So it allows us to mass create and update large quantities of blank custom products by importing that pre-configured data and maybe image files directly into the system. All right, and the format that we're going to be using here is described in the required files for importing products article. But again, looking at this summary here, we're going to be using CSV file format, which essentially you can think of as a spreadsheet, right? If you're familiar with Microsoft Excel or any type of system like that, maybe Google Sheets, you're familiar with what's essentially the same as a CSV format, comma separated values, which a lot of spreadsheet applications do export out to. All right, so rather than dealing with that format in kind of a text-based interface, you can go ahead and use Excel to generate your data, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. All right, so just running through the import quickly here. So to import products in our DecoNetwork system, you're going to go into the products section. From there on the top right corner, you'll see the import action. And today we're looking at import products, not import inventory levels. So you would go ahead and choose import products, and that's going to start you down the process. So there's a series of steps that the system's going to walk you through. The first one obviously being to name your import, and the second step is providing the files to go ahead and run that import. So there's a series of files that the system is going to require from you. A CSV file containing the product SKU data. So that's going to be information about your colors, your sizes, your styles, all of that information in one spreadsheet. You're going to need your product images. This is kind of optional. We'll see a little bit later on. You can import products without images, but that may not necessarily be useful if you're, for example, looking to pull those products into the design tool. But if you just want the data in there, that is an option. But for the most part, we're going to be looking at including the product images. All right, you're also going to need a color palette. That's going to be a separate CSV file, which is going to contain the RGB values, red, green, blue values for the product colors that you're associating with that product SKU spreadsheet. So for example, just to give a quick example here, the SKU sheet might contain the Gildan 2000 in black. And if you think about it, a computer may not necessarily know, or the DecoNetwork may not necessarily know what black is. It knows that that's a name, but it doesn't know what color to associate with that name. So that's what the color palette does for us. It associates a name with an actual visible color. All right, next we'll need a size chart. This is if you want to go ahead and display the size chart table along with your products in DecoNetwork, you can go ahead and provide that. You can also provide a spec sheet, which typically would be like a PDF file, maybe the manufacturer's spec sheet for that specific style. All right, so that's the different files that you can import into DecoNetwork for this purpose. And really the option that we'll be using is actually a zip file. So rather than importing those files individually, what we're going to do is we're going to create a zip archive combining all of those different files so that we only have to do one upload versus any number of uploads separately. Okay, so once you've uploaded those files, again, the system's going to recognize those different formats. It's going to walk you through the process. On the third step, there are going to be some options for you to choose from. So whether you want to match products that you're importing, let's say I did an import last week and now I'm re-importing that same data maybe with price changes. So do I want to match products to what's already in my system? In that case, you might say yes. There are some cases where you might want to say no if you want to create maybe a second copy of products rather than updating the existing ones. All right, you could also go ahead and discontinue or delete unmatched products. So again, if I'm updating product information from what I did last week, maybe my supplier removed some styles. They no longer sell specific styles, so those have dropped off from my data. And these options here would allow you to drop those styles from your system as well if they're no longer present in the import information. All right, and you can also do things like import the color values. If you have that enabled, it'll go ahead and use the new values versus keeping the old ones. All right, so the system will walk you through these steps. At the end of the import process, you'll have an opportunity to review what's being imported. You'll get a summary including how many products you're adding, how many you're updating, things like that. There may be some warnings that you get which aren't too critical, like if the categories that you've set in your data aren't present, you may get a warning about that. But that's really not something to worry about. We do have the option to create any categories that are missing. So let's go ahead and take a look at that previous article, the required files for importing. And so this is actually the full specification of that import format. Like I mentioned at the top of this session, the import format is essentially a spreadsheet. And down here under product data, we include a description of each of those column headings, right? So what you see here are column headings that will be present in your import spreadsheet and a description of each of those so that you know how those need to be filled out. So this is pretty useful if you're manually creating that information. Even more useful, here at the top, we have sample files for you to download. All right, so if I go ahead and take a look here at the last download link, which contains all the files in a single package, I'll go ahead and download that. And it's going to download it as a zip archive. So let me show that in my downloads folder, and I'll go ahead and extract that out. And let's take a look at what that data looks like. All right, so I have a series of CSV files. I have a couple of JPEG images. I have a folder with some additional JPEG images. These appear to be the different views for a product in 3 colors, navy, purple, and red. And then I have a separate folder which mentions templates, decoration templates, and these are Photoshop documents. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of these. So DecoNetwork allows you to import product images in a couple of ways. One is as flat images, which are these sample images that you see here. You're telling the system for the front navy, use this image. For the back navy, use this one. For the left side navy, use this one, so on and so forth, right? View, each view in every color will have an associated image. All right, but the alternate option is to use a dynamic template, which is created here in Photoshop. And it looks something like this. So these are images that have been prepared so that the DecoNetwork system will automatically colorize them based on the RGB color values that are also part of your import. So to give you a brief kind of emulation of what DecoNetwork will do, um, I can just apply a solid red layer here and just apply a blend mode. So DecoNetwork would do something like this, right? No matter what color I import, let's say I do a row that says this product is available in purple, and I give the RGB values 199, 91, 218, I'll get an image that looks like this. Or let's say, I also offer this in a yellow, and I provide these RGB values, DecoNetwork will generate an image that looks like this. All right, so it is a good way to import your product images if you have kind of flat colors. However, if you're doing any kind of pattern type of garment, maybe camo or stripes, anything like that, that's really not suitable for the dynamic template. In that case, you would want to use the flat images so that you can do a different image for the camo versus the stripes or whatever the case might be. All right, so let's jump back into our data and let's take a look at the rest of the files here. So let me open up the example product SKUs sheet. This is really the primary bit of data that you're going to be using for your import. Alongside that, I'm going to open up my example color values RGB and my example size chart as well. All right, so those are the three main files that I'm going to be taking a look at. There's an additional example color values hex sheet, which is an alternative to the RGB. So you wouldn't necessarily use both, it's one or the other. All right, so let's start here in the SKU sheet. Let me just go ahead and expand these columns to fit the contents. All right, and you'll notice here the very first row in our file matches those column names that we looked at earlier. I'm just going to make this a little bit more visible. All right, so here in the product SKUs sheet, I've gone ahead and made the headings a little bit more visible. And you'll notice that row number 1 is associated with our import headings. Every subsequent row is part of our import data. And really, we're only importing, you'll see there's quite a bit of rows here, but really we're only importing two product styles. We're importing a polo shirt X and polo shirt Y. But each of those two styles is made up of many different SKUs. In this case, we're importing polo shirt X in black, bottle, and canary colors. So three different colors, and each color has 8 different sizes, extra small through 4XL. All right, so you can think of each of these rows as a size and color combination, right? And that's also kind of apparent just by some of the naming of these data columns. So let's kind of review each one. So product name, that one's pretty straightforward. Product description as well. Brand, straightforward. DN product type, That is a critical one that we can take a look at. DN product type associates with product grouping inside of DecoNetwork. So if I pull up my DecoNetwork screen here and I jump into the products section, from here on the left-hand side menu, we'll want to choose product defaults. I need to go ahead and enable that option. All right, so let's go ahead and add it. All right, so now that I have product defaults, I can go ahead and jump into this page, and these are my product types or product groups or product defaults. Whatever you set in this column here for a row should match something available here. Now, these are some system ones that we enable by default. You can also create your own by choosing new product default from this page. So let's say I'm doing beach towels. Maybe I want those in their own product grouping. So I could go ahead and create a new product default, name it beach towels. It doesn't really matter what I call it. The important thing is whatever you call it in DecoNetwork should match the name that you set in your import data, right? So that has to match what's present in DecoNetwork. All right, the next column over is the vendor product code. This is sometimes referred to as the style number. So, 200 or 2000 or G200 for the Gildan 2000, whatever the case might be. So this is your style number. And then the next column over is the SKU code. So this is the specific code associated with the size and color combination. So if you're importing data from one of your suppliers, they most likely will already have that value. Otherwise, you can kind of generate it yourself by concatenating maybe the product code, the color, and the size, which is what I've done here in the example. So I've got the product code plus the color plus the size gives me a unique per row SKU code. All right, so we've set our style number. We know what SKU code is. Next up, we've got the color name, right? So black, bottle, canary, and then for polo shirt Y, we have navy, purple, and red, right? Each of those colors of each style is being supplied in 8 different sizes here. All right. Size code and size name are fairly similar. The one that will display to your user on the front end is the size code. So that's really the one that you would want to make easily visible to your customer. For example, you might call that 4XL or this one L, but the size name, you might call it large, right? That might be kind of a larger name that you might want to see in the back end, but for your customers, they'll only see the short name or the code. All right. The next column over is the color palette name. So now we start getting into some of these additional files that are required. So let me actually split this up. I'll put that on the left-hand side, and I'll put my color sheet on the right-hand side so we can look at them together. So here in my product data, I'm saying the color palette name that I'm using is the example color values RGB.csv file. And what I'm telling the import is when you're looking to get the value of this color black or this color bottle or canary, take a look at what value is stored for that name in the following file. So I'm just giving it a file to reference. The system will then take a look at that secondary file. It'll look up the name like black, and it'll pick up those red, green, and blue values. So black in this case is going to be 29 red, 29 green, and 29 blue. And let's actually just kind of pull that up again using that Photoshop file that I have as an example. So let me add that solid color back in, and I'll put 29 as the values here. All right, and let's overlay that. So, if the system was colorizing it based on that value, it would give us an image that looks something like this here. All right, similarly, we can take a look at one of the other examples, like the bottle color. So for bottle, it's using 276044. All right, so it would create a colorized image that looks something like that. So it's merely for referencing those values. All right, and the reason why that's separated out into a separate file is so that you don't have to define those values over and over again. So if I'm using bottle here, I don't want to have to type in those 3 values every time. If I have another product from the same brand, maybe the shirt 001, and it also has a bottle variant, I wouldn't want to have to redefine or re-enter those RGB values. So by separating it out, you can kind of have your palette that the system can choose from based on the color name. All right, that takes care of the colors here now. It looks like that second style that we have in here is actually using the separate color sheet. So let's go ahead and open that one up. Example color values hex. Like I mentioned, this isn't necessarily a secondary requirement. It's just a different way to supply your colors. So it's set up similarly, except instead of supplying those RGB values as red, green, blue, we're supplying them as a hexadecimal combined value. So this actually contains the similar values. So if I copy this 6-digit code here, and if we take back a look at our Photoshop example, Photoshop can also accept that hex style of color. If I go ahead and paste it in, you'll notice it's the same value, 29, 29, 29. So it's just a different format for RGB information. All right, and you can choose whichever of the 2 formats is easier for you. Maybe it's you make that choice based on the information that you were able to retrieve from the supplier whose products you're importing. Maybe the data that they use uses hex values, or maybe they use RGB values. All right. The next file or column that we can take a look at is the size table. Let me go ahead and open up that file. All right, and so this is one that actually you may end up with quite a bit of different size chart files. A size chart would be associated maybe with a brand or with a specific style, and really what you're providing is um, dimensions for specific areas at specific sizes. So in this example here, we're saying we have just one area, which is the chest area. And we're saying for an extra small, the chest area is this big. For a small, the chest area is that big, so on and so forth. So I could add an additional area and say length. And for the extra small, that might be 40 inches. For the small, that might be 42, so on and so forth. So this is actually just a matrix of sizes and areas and their values. Okay, so you can have any number of areas. This cell here is just kind of the label cell, so you can leave that alone. Let's say you have a product that you're going to input a size chart for, and it only goes up to Excel. You could go ahead and delete those 2 columns and just provide something like that. All right, so there's really no requirements in terms of how many columns or rows you need to have. It's really based on the data that you're importing. Right. Similarly, if let's say I have a product that doesn't really, it's maybe not apparel. Let's say it's headwear or something like that, and maybe there's just there's sizes based on some width. So you might have a size called 10 inches. You might have one called 14 inches and one 18 inches. Right. So the columns aren't fixed. You don't have to stick to those values. All right. So you might have something like that, and maybe the area is circumference, and you could go ahead and enter in that value. Right, so it's pretty flexible in terms of how you want to set up your size charts. It's really up to you and how you want to provide that data. Let me just show what that ends up generating inside of DecoNetwork. So let me open up my products here. Let's take a look at one of these products, and hopefully these have size charts enabled on them. All right, so in this case, the supplier has provided this size matrix here for extra small, small, medium, and large, and these different areas: body length, body width, and sleeve length. And we get those different values. So the system will generate a table that looks like that based on the spreadsheet that you generate. All right, let's jump back into our product SKU sheet, again, our main sheet with all of our data. The next column over allows you to import a sales image. This column here, lifestyle image. What a sales image is, if I click back into my blank product listing here, this is typically what is considered the sales image in DecoNetwork. For the most part, it's usually some model wearing the image, really a marketing image for that product. If we click into that product, we'll notice that the designer image is actually different from that sales image. So the product image may be more of a flat type of display, whereas the sales image, again, it's meant more for marketing, so it may be more of a model type image, someone actually an active shot, if you could think of it that way, someone wearing it or something like that. All right, so that's the differentiation, and so we do allow you to import one sales image to associate with a specific style that you're importing. All right, now the lifestyle image isn't set per SKU, so it's not, each size and color combination doesn't have its own lifestyle image. That is shared between all of the SKUs in a specific style. So it's one sales image or lifestyle image per style. So what you see here in our example data is that the same file name is repeated across all of the SKUs of the one style. That also applies for some of these other columns that we looked at, like the size chart image, the size table, right? We're using one size table for the entire style. So we repeat the same value for each of the rows which represent SKUs in that one style. All right, so now we start getting into the actual product images. Um, like I mentioned earlier, when we looked at the image data itself, there's two ways that you can provide your product image data. One is through dynamic templates, which is that Photoshop style of format that will allow DecoNetwork to recolor your image based on values that you provide. The second is that more flat image style, where maybe you've already prepared the images for each separate color, and you simply are going to tell DecoNetwork use this image for the front, for the back, for the left, for the right view. All right, so what we see in this example data is our first style is using the dynamic template, and our second style is using the separate image option. So we're actually using both here with one example. All right, what you don't want to do, and what's really not possible, is to use both styles of importing images for one product. So I could not, for example, say I want to use a dynamic template for view number one and use flat images for the remainder of the views. Right? So you won't be able to mix image formats in this way where you're using one template and 4 images. You do have to stick to one way of providing the images throughout that entire style, not throughout the entire import, but throughout a single style. So you could, for example, import the Gildan 2000 using a dynamic template, because for the most part that has pretty solid colors. And then if you have a different style that has, again, some patterns, for that you could go ahead and use the separate image option. Okay, so again, these are just references to the file names that we want to use here. So for our dynamic template, we want to use, for our first view is going to be APS front.psd, APS back, left side and right side. So we're just referencing the file that we want the system to use. And then associated with this image data, both the dynamic templates and our separate image for each color, are the names of our views. So let's take a look at where those names show up. If I load up a product here, in this product here, we have a back view and we have a front view. So these are the names associated with that specific view. And you have the ability to go ahead and name them as part of your import. So in this case, I'm providing 4 views for each of these styles, and I'm naming them front, back, left side, and right side. Okay, but again, keeping in mind that you might be importing different types of products, you may want to call this something differently. So maybe you're importing signs or banners, and you might want to say banner front or banner back, whatever the case might be. All right, we're almost done here. Towards the end here, we're going to have information about the pricing. Now, pricing is a little bit tricky. I'm actually going to save that one for the end. So let's take a look at some of these subsequent ones. Categories, you can provide up to 3 categories through the import. You'll notice here in our first category, I'm filing these 2 styles into the category polo shirts. And then the subsequent category that I'm using is actually a subcategory of that polo shirts category. So it's polo shirts men's. So we do allow you to nest categories in that way using the pipe character. So I could say polo shirts, maybe I have a different category called workwear. All right, and I could go ahead and assign these to that category as well. All right, something like that. Or let's say maybe that workwear category is within men's. I could also nest that there. So I could say polo shirts men's workwear and set those there. All right, so it's pretty flexible. You do get up to 3 categories that you can import. You want to make sure to name those column headings accordingly, category 1, 2, and 3. And so you'll be able to change these for each of the styles. Right, so if I wanted, maybe I want that first style in workwear, but the second style I want in casual or something like that. So I can go ahead and change this style to be in casual instead of workwear. All right, so you have that flexibility there. And then these last 4 columns allow you to set shipping dimensions for your products. Now, how does that play into actually using these products in DecoNetwork? What use does that provide? Well, with DecoNetwork, we allow you to integrate with live shipping providers like UPS, Stamps.com here in the US. And those shipping providers will provide you with shipping rate estimates. So when your customer is checking out and they add your products to their shopping cart, those dimensions are going to be embedded with that product so that DecoNetwork can generate an overall package size and package weight, send that off to your shipping carrier, let's say UPS. UPS takes those dimensions, they generate a rate estimate for shipping, they send that back to DecoNetwork so that when your customer's checking out, they get an estimate and you can kind of know how much they're going to be paying, or they can actually pay for that postage during the checkout process. So it's useful for that purpose. Without these values, your products would not be eligible for use with live shipping methods. So if you have any products that are missing these dimensions, your live shipping methods would not show up during the checkout process. So you would end up only showing the custom shipping methods that you've manually priced out. All right, so it is pretty important and useful for you to set these dimensions. And the important thing you want to keep in mind here is these are the dimensions for one piece, a single product, as it's packaged and ready for shipment. So that's the best way for DecoNetwork to estimate what the final shipping dimension is going to be, is to take one product, maybe for packaging, you fold that shirt or whatever the product is, prepare it as if you were going to go ahead and ship it, measure it out, and input those dimensions here. All right, so let's jump back and let's kind of rewind and take a look at pricing. For that one there, I'm going to switch back to our help article and kind of review what's mentioned here. All right, pricing is mentioned towards the bottom here of the description. And you'll notice that there's two different pricing modes that you can utilize through the import. One is SKU-based pricing, and the other is color group-based pricing. So depending on which mode you want to use, you'll either use the piece price column, which is associated with SKU level pricing. So through SKU level pricing, you're telling DecoNetwork the price of every size and color combination. And it'll end up looking something like this. If I go ahead and pull up my configuration screen for one of these products. All right, so SKU pricing will look something like this, right? It's a table of prices based on size and color. All right, the other option is the color group-based pricing. For that, you'll use the column vendor retail. And rather than being that matrix of sizes and colors, you'll get a setup that looks something like this. If I switch mine to color group-based pricing, it's really three prices that you set. One price for your white colored shirts, one price for your light colored shirts, and one price for your dark colored shirts. So three different prices. When using this method, the system will also automatically generate sizing surcharges. So if I take a look at my sizing section, there is this field for a sizing surcharge. So based on the pricing that you set through that vendor retail column, if, for example, the small is $5 and the extra large is $6, the system will intuitively find that that $1 should be a surcharge against the large. All right, so those are your two options for pricing. As far as what I recommend, for ease of use, I do recommend the piece price option using SKU pricing. It's a lot more, it's easier to understand, I find, and in terms of accuracy with what you would expect to see in the back end, this is going to be the better option. All right, so I think we've kind of ran through the entirety of the import data. I did describe these as we went through, but for you on your own, keep in mind you do have the reference back to the help article. So if you're looking at the data, the example data, and you're not sure about a specific column, you can always refer back to the help article, and it's going to give you a description of what that specific column is for. For example, for color palette name, it says it's the file name of the color data CSV palette file used to look up color codes. All right, and it gives you a link to the color data section in the article, so you can go and learn more about color data and see how to generate that. All right, so this is a really useful resource when you're creating your product imports. So hopefully explaining that the import data is essentially a series of spreadsheets has kind of removed some of the mystery behind that and some of the complexity. So let's just run now through importing this sample data and go through those steps. So I'm going to jump into my DecoNetwork admin area. I'm going to click into products. So I've actually imported these products before. So let me go ahead and delete what we have now so we can get some fresh copies. All right, and we've gotten rid of those two products there. So let's jump over into import products. If you remember that guide that we looked at, kind of guided us through these steps. Once I choose import products, I can start a new import, and I could go ahead and name it. So we give you a default name based on the date, but you could go ahead and rename that. Let's say my brand products 2018 catalog. Okay, hit next. On the second step, we're going to prompt you to provide your product data. So let's take a look at those files that we downloaded. Right, we downloaded them as a zip archive and we extracted them, but let's say on your system you're working within a folder and maybe you end up with all these different files. So you don't want to have to upload those one by one. Instead, you want to create a zip archive. If you're on a PC, on a Windows PC, you can select all those files, do a right click, and that's going to give you access to the Send To menu. And one of the options in that Send To menu is the compressed zip folder, which is what we're looking for. All right, so from there, I'll go ahead and select compressed zipped folder. It's going to automatically generate that zip file, and I could go ahead and rename it brand products 2018. All right. If you're on a Mac, you can similarly select multiple files, either right click if you have a mouse or two-finger click on a trackpad. And the option there is compress items. So however many items you have selected, you'll see an option compress 10 items, and that's going to generate that zip file for you. All right, so let me take this zip file. I can go ahead and just drag it into my file chooser and press the upload option. All right, so it's uploading now. We see that here on the bottom left. Once it's done, it's going to go ahead and extract that zip file on the server, so we don't have to worry about uploading the multiple files. It's going to say processing archive. It's going to extract all of those independent files and identify them. So it's going to recognize which file is the SKU sheet, which file is my size chart, which one is a color palette, and which files are product images. And it's going to do that intuitively based on the file format as well as the file contents. All right, this is taking a little bit longer than usual. Doesn't usually take this long, so this may have gotten stuck. Let me go ahead and refresh this page and see if we get a different update here. All right, we'll leave that one working in the background. In the meantime, I'm gonna start a second one here and see if that one actually completes a little bit faster. So start a new upload. Oops, I think we'll actually need to cancel this one. Hello guys, sorry about that. We had a hiccup here with my computer. It actually froze, but I'm back on. I did just want to finish up and show the last step here, which is actually importing that example data. So I'm going to start a new import here on the top right. I can go ahead and proceed to step 2, which is actually uploading that information. All right, so I'm going to choose file. I've got that in my downloads, and I've named it brand products 2018.zip. I'm not sure where the stream cut off last time. I did explain how to generate that zip archive. If you're on a Windows PC, you can select multiple files and do right-click, send to compressed zip folder. If you're on a Mac, you select multiple files, either two-finger click on a trackpad or right-click on a mouse and choose compress items. All right, so once you have that zip archive, you can go ahead and upload it into step 2 of the import process. And DecoNetwork's going to go ahead and import that file. Since it is a zip archive, it's going to extract out the different files. We see that happening now. Once it's done extracting that archive, it's going to recognize each of the individual components based on their file type, as well as their actual contents. All right, so here it's recognized that I have a SKU sheet. I have 14 images, 2 color palettes, 1 size chart, and 4 dynamic templates. All right, so I can go ahead and proceed to the next step. This is where I'm presented with the different options. I can go ahead and match products, which isn't going to do anything. In this case, I don't already have those products in my system. I also don't have any products that I'm removing, so I don't have to worry about discontinuing unmatched products or SKUs. And similarly, these are all new color values, so I don't have to worry about updating those. I do want to go ahead and create missing categories. So my import data included a category called polo shirts, which I don't already have in my system. So I do need those created. And then you do also have the option to remove categories from products that are missing from the SKU data. So if you, for example, already had the Gildan 2000 and it's filed into apparel women's, but your import data does not have it filed there, you could go and have that category removed from it. All right, you do have the option to go ahead and allow product with no view. So I mentioned uh, at the start, images aren't necessarily required. You can import products without images, but if you want to use them in the designer, you really would want to eventually apply images onto that product. But this option here will allow those products to be imported even if they don't have any images or views associated with them. And then allow missing files. If your import file, for example, referenced a size chart called size chart 2018.csv and that file isn't there, ticking this option on will still allow the import to happen. You might want to tick that off if this is your first time import so that you're aware of things like typos. Maybe you had a typo on a file name or something like that. And so it would be useful for you to turn that off and be aware of any missing files. All right, this option down here is an important one. New products marked as configured means if all of the product data is there and there aren't any errors in your product data, if this is enabled, those products will become active right after import. So if you want to go ahead and import products and leave them inactive until you go through and maybe review them and manually activate each one, you would want to leave that off. For now, I'm going to leave that on. And then the last one, similarly to create missing categories, I can go ahead and create missing brands. So if I'm importing a lot of new brands that aren't already in my DecoNetwork system, I can go ahead and create those on the fly. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed to the next step, which is the final step in actually importing that data. All right, so we're going to get a summary here explaining what the system found. So before my import, I had 124 products in my system with 63 SKUs. After the import, I now have 126 products and 111 SKUs. So I've added 48 new SKUs and I've added 2 new products. All right, that's the summary of my import. I can go ahead and hit complete to finalize this process. All right, we're just about done here. So you could see, in this example here, we added just 2 products, but you could see if you have maybe 100 products, maybe 200 products from a supplier that you're looking to import, this CSV import option really would help you out in terms of how much work you have to do manually to get those into your system. There is still some work that you need to do manually after those products are imported. So let's take a look at how these ended up. Let's open up the Polo Shirt X and the Polo Shirt Y into the configuration page. So you'll notice these are already active for sale. I imported all of the necessary information. Under colors for the Polo Shirt X, I have black, bottle, and canary. Under the colors for the Polo Shirt Y, I've got navy, purple, and red. So let's take a look at the product images. So Polo Shirt X was uploaded using the dynamic template option. So one of the benefits of that is if I come in here and add an additional color to that style, let's say this blue jerry color, I don't have to generate any new image, right? The system's automatically on the fly generating that image based on the RGB values. So I could add fuchsia, I could add in this illusion color, and this reactive rainbow. So I'll select that one there, and I already have the image for it. Whereas if you compare that to Polo Shirt Y, which we did using separate image, if I add an additional color, um, let's say I add that same one, fuchsia, hit OK, it's going to prompt me to upload the image. So I've added a new color, which means I now need to import the images for that color. For each of my views, I need a front, back, left, and right image for that specific color. So it is a little bit more work, but again, this is the way you'll need to import your images if they are anything with patterns. So if you've got a camo, a tie-dye, uh, any type of pattern product like that, you will want to use the separate image because the pattern changes often from one color variation to another. All right, so the import will by default add the following decoration areas, the ones that you see here: a body, a left chest, and a right chest to the front, to actually the first area, whatever first area you import. It'll add those decoration locations. And for the second location, it's going to add one called back. For any subsequent areas, it'll also add one called back. So this is where you may still need to do some manual work. You could go ahead and delete the automatically added ones and start placing whatever ones you want there. Let's say on the left side, I want the left sleeve, so I can come in here, say add, and let's see, I don't think I have my sleeves enabled. But let's say, I had it in here. Let's just say right leg. So I could add it in. Let's imagine that's the left sleeve. I could place it, hit OK, and I could do the same for my right side. Find it, size it, and place it. Hit OK. All right, I may need to do an adjustment. These are, again, automatically placed, so the sizing and placement may not be accurate. You can come in here and adjust it as necessary. All right, that front looks all right. And you would just hit save to finalize those changes. All right, so once again, just to finalize the session here, CSV import, a really useful way to get a lot of product data into your DecoNetwork system really quickly. Um, you do still have to do some manual work after you've imported those products, depending on what type of product you're importing. And then pay attention to obviously how you're kind of generating those files. Make sure to reference our help documentation, both the required files for importing products document, as well as the importing products document, which will actually guide you through those steps. All right, so that ends today's session.